Greetings and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting for Monday, May 8th, 2023. Call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Let the record reflect that all councilors are present. I'd like to invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Item 4, there's no general information this evening. That brings us to item 5, any committee correspondence to council? Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Saturday, Saco hosted Jane's Walk. The Saco Museum and Library, in collaboration with the Saco Art Commission and Saco Main Street, and the walk was led by the museum's education and program manager, Anatole Brown. From what I understand, there were about 26 people who walked, and they started from the library parking lot, down through Pepperell Park, and up to Pepperell Square. When they hit Pepperell Square, they were treated with some snacks and goodies from Fernleaf and Sweet Sunrise. The event is an annual international walk, and 40 communities in Maine were represented. The walk was named after Jane Jacobs and has been continued in her memory. And the walk is a way for communities to share stories, history, and connect with their neighbors. Anatole provided history from, again, starting at the Dyer Library, down through Pepperell Park, all of the surrounding homes, City Hall, through Pepperell Park, Pepperell Square, and it was enjoyed by all. It's usually held the first May of every year, and hopefully next year will be anybody interested. Keep a date to it and hope to see it increase.
Thank you very much. Any further committee correspondence? Moving on to item 6, and that is public comment. First up on public comment is Chris Talbot. For those coming up, please speak directly into the microphone, state your name and address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Talbot. I live at 6 Chelsea Circle in Ward 3, and I'm the acting president of the Saco Main Street Board of Directors. I'm here tonight to request the council approve the budgeted amount of $100,000 that our city administrator provided in his budget proposal. Saco Main Street is making positive transitions as a 501c3 organization. Within the last year, we have welcomed several new board members, including myself. We have worked with 2 excellent executive directors to help us orient away from supporting the Saco Scoop as a business of focus to supporting all the downtown businesses. The numbers provided in the presentation to the council on April 24th showed how the city's contribution of $100,000 would greatly help us meet our projected overhead of just over $125,000 for the organization. The events themselves are paid for through sponsorships by our local businesses and organizations, but none of it would be possible without the coordination of our paid staff. We also have chosen to live by our mission by relocating our office to Pepperell Square, right in the heart of downtown community. We currently have 1.5 full-time equivalent paid professionals on our staff. We are proud to say that we are fully staffed with a knowledgeable, experienced, and passionate people. In today's economy, there are not many organizations that can state that. Our staff are also proud Saco residents that are raising families in our city. If the amendment is passed to reduce the total by 29%, it puts our organization at serious risk. We count on volunteers to make our events work, but the coordination and leadership of our paid staff is essential to make that happen. The residents of Saco and our neighboring communities have appreciated the events we host, and we hope to continue providing high-caliber events that help promote our downtown. Inflation has impacted everyone, and we're not immune to that. Instead of asking for a larger endowment, we are asking for the same amount awarded in 2020, 2021, and 2022. We are working to enhance relationships with local businesses for other avenues of development, but that's not something we can make happen overnight. I also want to remind the council that the funds for the endowment come from TIF accounts. It does not impact the mill rate of our tax-paying residents. The $100,000 investment in Saco Main Street allows us to continue partnering with several city departments, easing the challenges of serving our community. We proudly partner with Economic Development, Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and Saco Schools, just to name a few. In working together, we can make positive strides for our community. And in conclusion, I hope that you will consider rejecting the amendment to reduce the endowment to $71,000, and in turn, approve the city administrator's proposed amount of $100,000. I feel it is a great investment by the city and will pay dividends in the form of a thriving downtown business center that residents will be proud to call their hometown. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is William Zafferson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Saco City Councilors. My name is William Zafferson, and I live at 1 Cortlandt Circle. I am here once again to advocate for a sidewalk on the Ferry Road from Bayview Road to Seaside Avenue. On your agenda tonight, there are 2 amendments that I would like to speak in favor of. The first is listed as Action Item H1, Amendment to Fiscal Year 2024 City Administrator's Budget, Capital Reserve, and that was submitted by Councilor Berman. He is asking to set aside $500,000 in funds that will accumulate and grow to support larger-scale transportation projects. I am in favor of this because it will create some momentum for projects that demonstrate great need, but don't fit into an annual budget. In listening to the discussion of last week's council meeting, there was a suggestion that there is a demonstrated need, but there are logistics that need to be hammered out, possibly at a workshop session. I recommend that you approve this amendment tonight, at least committing the funds now, and then resolving the items of concern at your earliest opportunity. This will allow the city to seek available funding. You have a shovel-ready project, and there is a clear propensity at the state and federal level to support certain infrastructure projects. Failure to adopt this amendment and then hammer out the details in the near future sends a clear message that at least 1 more year will pass before any dollars are committed to this or any other project. I am also here to advocate for Action Item H3, Amendment to Fiscal Year 2024 City Administrator's Budget, submitted by Councilor McPhail, who, in her case, she is putting forth an amendment for $20,000 used to fund pedestrian safety along the Ferry Road and throughout Saco. This can be used to support measures that may improve pedestrian safety. If applied to Ferry Road, any positive change is appreciated. It's important to recognize that there is an inherent danger, despite all the good efforts of the police department to control speed in some of the types of driving that we see on that section of road. The number of cars, the large number of tourists visiting who may not be familiar with the laws of the roadway itself. I want to remind you that this road is a gateway to one of Saco's greatest natural resources used by residents from all over the city, not just Ward 4. A sidewalk is truly the best solution at the end of the day. Dozens of citizens have spoken before you and sent in emails over the past year and a half. Just this past Saturday, a couple walking by my home shared that they too were almost hit, this time by a local pickup truck hauling a trailer full of lobster traps who was riding alongside the white line. That truck did not provide them any room, and they needed to jump out of the way in order to avoid being hit. The need to do something is great, and I implore you to take positive action on these 2 amendments. This can at least demonstrate some positive momentum on an item that has been under consideration for the better part of 20 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Angela Presby.
Good evening. My name is Angie Presby. I'm the Executive Director for Saco Main Street and live at 28 Douglas Ave. When Saco Main Street presented to you, we anticipated we were going to have 4 main questions asked to us. the sale of the Saco Scoop, the car show relocation, funding for an additional employee, and why the parade was canceled. I'd like to take this opportunity to clarify those items for you. The Saco Scoop started as a business incubation program, created many jobs for high school students, and kept lights on after 5 p.m. on Main Street. It quickly became a success, so much so that the Scoop became a standalone business. The Saco Scoop began to take away time from Saco Main Street, delivering on its mission. Jen Day was performing more Saco Scoop ownership work than she was able to get on the ground and make connections with our businesses. There was a heavy focus on keeping the Scoop operational and less focus on our downtown businesses. Selling the Scoop freed up our assets so that we could resume our mission to support all Main Street businesses as a Main Street program should. Most importantly, we had to sell the Scoop. It became very clear that a nonprofit could not own a business that was more profitable than the nonprofit itself. We would have been in jeopardy of losing our 501c3. Our accountants said we needed to sell it or shut it down. The Scoop did exactly what it was intended to do, and now it is home to a new Saco entrepreneur. Melissa and her family were able to make the purchase, and the transition has been very successful. I stop in and chat with her, and she states that folks are coming in even more often now that she owns it. They enjoy supporting a family. The car show. At last year's conference, the CEO of Main Street America had a message for all directors. Reevaluate your events. If there was one event that could be passed on to free some time to work on local business support and program development, do it. The TA Alumni Association had expressed interest in hosting an event. The car show was held at TA years ago, so the board felt like this was a great opportunity for both organizations. We were willing to pass this event on in its entirety. However, after some discussion, we are still going to own the event and work with the TA Alumni Association using Thornton Academy as our hosts. Moving the event to TA is not only great improvement for safety, but also makes a lot of car owners feel more comfortable entering their cars into the show. Some didn't like bringing their cars to a street that wasn't closed off. We checked in with Rapid Raise. They report it's a break-even day. Their regulars can't find parking, so the car show attendees come in and the sales are replaced. Rapid Raise also tells me that they've heard from customers who are excited about the relocation, and we're going to have a Saco Main Street table there where we'll be promoting to visit all Main Street businesses after the car show. After awards are announced, folks will start filtering out, and there will be plenty of time left to grab lunch and do some shopping on Main Street. There was a question about the $29,000 additional ask for an employee, and I know I have 12 seconds left, and I have so much more to tell you guys. So that, as you can probably see in our budget, that was based on a time when the Scoop was becoming much more successful and popular, and at the time, we also had one of the lowest paid executive directors on an accredited Main Street. So now jump ahead 4 years down the road and inflation has skyrocketed, and $100,000 covers a portion of my salary, a portion of Holly's, and some of having a downtown office. So a decrease in $29,000 would jeopardize our part-time employee having a job. The parade, weather, with a lot of conversation with fire, police, public works, communication, parks and rec, it became very evident that our spectators and the 26 city employees that would be staffing the event would be in jeopardy due to hazardous weather conditions. So moving forward, our silver lining, we do have a backup date for 2023. So the parade will go on. And just in closing, I'd like to say that despite this budget process being the most stressful part of the job so far, I absolutely love being the executive director for Saco Main Street. My previous job was not very fulfilling, but it did provide me with a pension, 401k, contributions, bonuses, merit increases, strong health benefits. And while Saco Main Street can offer me far less monetarily, it has completely provided me with a sense of purpose. And the people of Main Street, the community that comes together, the support local vibe, helping others, connecting people, it's all really meaningful. So it's a great day to be on Main. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Don Pylon.
Don Pylon, Glen Haven Circle. When I was reviewing the budget, I noticed that the Emergency Management Agency has been eliminated, but I think that had been eliminated
or merged into the fire department maybe a year or two ago. The Emergency Management Agency responsibilities and duties are separate from that of the fire department. An example would be in the event that we had a natural disaster like Camp Ellis, and the fire department and the police show up. The fire department's responsibility would be to evacuate the citizens, and it would be their life safety and evacuation. Now, in the event that we had another one of these disasters, and the city decided to open up a shelter, it would be the Emergency Management Agency's responsibility, i.e. in Saco, to open up a shelter. Now, how do you do that? It would have to have been already determined that you had the Franklin Street location, for example, and it would have had to be certified by the Red Cross to be a certified location. The reason for that is you pick up the phone, you call York County EMA, York County EMA would call Red Cross, they would come in, they would staff it, they serve the meals, and there's a protocol when it's a certified Red Cross shelter. We wouldn't have to do that, we wouldn't have to staff it, and then there's a liability if we, the city, decided to take on that responsibility. If we served a meal and somebody got sick, we're going to get sued. That's part of the job of being the EMA, having an EMA director here. Going back to the disaster at Camp Ellis, if it's a declared natural disaster, we're now in line to have federal money come in and rebuild the infrastructure. And I've seen it, the infrastructure being ripped out at the beach, the water mains, the sewer mains. Now you're in line to get federal disaster funds to put all that back together. And there's, Councilor Johnston, you're familiar with some of that because you've been here a lot longer. The new council members, I would encourage, whether it be the city administrator or the mayor, have the York County EMA director come to one of your meetings and explain what York County EMA's duties and responsibilities are and how he reports to Maine Emergency Management and what they do to service our community. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all for those that have signed up. If there's anyone who would like to address the city council, please come forward and be heard. With nobody seeking recognition, moving on from public comment to item 7 on the agenda, and that's the approval of the minutes for May 1st, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Councilor Berman, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on the minutes for May 1st, 2023? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 8, the consent agenda. There are 3 items. Item A is to approve the June, July, and August council dates on page 3. Item B is notice of election for the budget validation referendum and special referendum election for June 13th, 2023 on page 4. And item C is to confirm the mayor's appointment to the Conservation Commission of Patrick Dempsey on page 8. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Councilor McPhail, is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Berman, anyone would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Roll call vote on the consent agenda. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 9, action items. Item A is page 10 in your packet. It's a public hearing, final reading, Community Development Block Grant, grant application, housing assistance, and that is Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Economic Development Department submitted a letter of intent for a CDBG housing assistance grants on behalf of LB Development Partners. LB Development Partners are planning to build 60 units of mixed-income senior housing at 624 to 644 Main Street. The city was successful with the letter of intent and has been invited to submit a complete grant application in the amount of $500,000 as part of the next phase of the project. The Economic Development Department will act as the grant administrator and will oversee the project to make sure all CDBG criteria are being followed and reported. There is no grant match required from the city. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Archer to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to open the public hearing at 6:52. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak on this item, the Community Development Block Grant, grant application housing assistance, please come forward and be heard. With nobody seeking recognition, Councilor Archer.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Roll call vote to close the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 at 6:52. Councilor Archer?
Yes. Be it ordered that the City Council grant to support the submission of a CDBG housing assistance application in the amount of $500,000. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Archer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. I just wanted to make a comment for the benefit of the public and my fellow councilors. I've talked about one of the pathways to trying to alleviate some of our affordable housing crisis. This is a perfect example of the public-private partnerships that I think can get us there. These LIHTC deals, I've had some experience with them myself in my banking career. This one just happens to be addressing a segment of affordable housing, of the broader range of affordable housing being a senior over 55. But I think all of us need to look at this as a shining example of ways in which we can try to tackle affordable housing, not just housing in general. So I commend Economic Development Director Desjardins for bringing this forward. I hope we have more of these. I think that this is a really good step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item B on page 17 in your packet, and that is a second and final reading for Budget Amendment Number 5, Police Department Revenues.
A former employee of the police department took a position with another municipality. The city of Saco received payment to cover the cost of MJCA certification. The police department and human resources wish to make use of the surplus revenues to fund needed recruitment and retention programs, as well as some needed equipment purchases. Be it ordered that the City Council approve the second and final reading of Budget Amendment Number 5, fiscal year 2023. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail, and thank you for jumping on that. I was still trying to search through the links. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion? No discussion, roll call vote. Counsel Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item C, a first reading, budget amendment number 6 on page 19 in your packet, and that's assigned to Counselor Archer.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The city of Saco received $18,570.83 in opioid settlement funds. We are recommending that the funds be used to purchase needed drug testing equipment for the department. Be it ordered, the City Council approves the first reading of Budget Amendment 6, fiscal year 2023, and moves to schedule a second and final reading for May 22nd, 2023. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Counselor Archer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item D on page 21. It's one reading, acceptance of a gift, and that is Counselor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle, and I will be reading in two motions. The city has been bequeathed a financial gift of $10,000 as directed in the will of Mr. Stephen Cody. Mr. Cody's will did not stipulate conditions. The council shall decide how the gift will be spent. Be it ordered that the city council accept the gift of $10,000 bequeathed by Mr. Stephen Cody. I move to approve that order.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Hatch, seconded by Counselor Johnston to accept the gift of $10,000 from Mr. Stephen Cody. Any discussion? Counselor Johnston.
So, I guess just for the public's knowledge, Mr. Cody was the son of former Mayor Charles Cody and the brother of former Mayor and Councilor Eric Cody. I grew up in Saco, served 20-plus years in the Air Force, and retired back here in Saco. So that'd be nice to recognize his contributions. I guess my question would be, I know that Eric handled the estate. Was there any indication from the other Mr. Cody as to what these funds may be spent on? So I guess there's that question for staff.
City Administrator Canrath, do we have an answer to Counselor Johnston's question?
I spoke with Eric Cody when he brought in the check and the will, and I asked this specific question. He said there was nothing that he could think of as far as a dedicated purpose, but the city should use their best judgment and recognizing his memory. So I think it's fairly open-ended. Also, you all received an email from Glennis also about a potential avenue of where to store these funds for now and then to use at council discretion going forward in the future. So, but there was no specific information about a dedicated purpose or cause or anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a little familiarity with Stephen, so I myself can probably think of a few things that he might be interested in putting this funds towards, but I'm definitely, I think, in support of, at this point, leaving it kind of open-ended, as has been suggested by staff, and I will reach out to Eric personally and see if he would be agreeable to those expenditures.
Any further discussion on accepting the $10,000 gift from Mr. Stephen Cody? Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Counselor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. I move to place Mr. Cody's gift in the city trust fund to be invested with interest earnings made available for council to designate on an annual basis. I move to approve the order.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Hatch, seconded by Counselor Johnston. Any discussion on placing the gift into an interest fund? No questions, no comments, roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman.
Yes.
Counselor Hatch.
Yes.
Counselor McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item E, adoption of the fee schedule for fiscal year 2024 on page 22 in your packet and assigned to Counselor Johnston.
Thank you. The City Council establishes and approves all fees and charges required by ordinances or policies in the City of Saco. This includes permits, licenses, approvals, and applications, as well as fees and charges collected by the City of Saco that are authorized by state law or require the city to set the amounts of such fees and charges. The council may establish any new fees or charges that the council deems necessary or appropriate to offset the cost of operating programs, delivering services, or administering any ordinances or policies. Those fees shall be included in the fee schedule and updated on an as-needed basis. The city staff recommends the city council approve the changes to the fee schedule. Be it ordered that the City Council approve the amended fee schedule for fiscal year 2024. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hatch. Any discussion? Counselor Johnston.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, I'm sure council already saw this, but we have included the charges for mobile vending units. I wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable with those fees that have been added. I have received already a little bit of pushback from bricks and mortars establishments on Main Street. So just for discussion, I think that perhaps increasing the, I believe it's everywhere else outside of the train station and, well, let me look at it. Let's see here. I believe the train station's set at 150 per week. Camp Ellis is at 250. I would entertain a conversation about increasing the Saco Transportation Center to 150 and bring up the other designated areas to 50 per week, or to 100 per week, sorry.
Counselor Johnston, is that a motion?
Yeah, for the purpose of discussion.
Which page are you on?
32.
And you're looking to increase the
Saco Transportation Center to
150?
yes, and then bring up the other city designated areas to 100.
Counselor Johnston has proposed an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Any discussion on the amendment only? The amendment only, now this is to increase the mobile food vending units fees at the Saco Transportation Center by $50 to $150, and the other city designated areas by also $50 to go to $100. Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand what Councilor Johnston is trying to do and the issue of fairness between mobile food vending units and brick and mortar shops. I also understand that we're trying to incentivize the use of food trucks downtown, both to bring people there, to serve tourists, and also to liven up the area a bit. I'm wondering if we can hear from city staff about the rationale of setting these particular rates before we make a decision on changing them.
I would invite, we had another small committee sort of working this, so I would invite up either Glennis, Dave, or Tracy. Does anyone want to comment or take the lead on speaking for the group? Thank you.
Tracy Dischartz, Director of Economic Development.
David Toomey, Director of Code Enforcement.
This was one that was very tricky when we were looking at it. One of the other things that we were looking at is that, okay, we want to bring food trucks to the area. We also was very sensitive to the brick and mortar businesses in the downtown. That's why when we looked at locations, they're kind of like further out on main streets, so we could kind of get that flow. We knew that we wanted to go a little higher for the train station as well as Camp Ellis, knowing that those would be kind of like the hot areas. The other thing we weren't sure of as far as on how many food trucks we were going to get. The idea was really, let's look at it, set a rate, get council's feedback, but also give it a year. We looked at this as kind of being a pilot. It was an opportunity to kind of just get our feet wet and then revisit it next year once we see how the season goes. That was the mindset behind it. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. We didn't set them in stone. Yeah, we were flexible, and if you made changes, we were open to any changes you might have.
Chief, did you have something you wanted to train in?
Sorry, I was slow, sorry. The other thing we tried to do is look at what other communities are doing as far as rates, and, is there a different rate depending on where a food truck is? We tried to look at other communities for a little bit of guidance, and then we tried to be on the lower side for the first year just to try it out. So we did look at some other communities.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Yeah, I very much have viewed this as a pilot also. I just brought this forward because it literally didn't take more than a couple days to start hearing, oh, you're inviting competition, at a low rate. And again, I'm kind of have reservations for the same reasons. I want to encourage it, but at the same time, we have two, well, one has opened, and another one will be opening soon on Store Street, and there's concern that that might have direct competition, whereas you're a bricks and mortar, you're paying all these permitting fees, whether it's through the city, the state, and incomes, direct competition. So that's where the idea with at least bumping up a little bit to make it, a little bit more fair, I guess. But again, I'm not really set in stone on this either. I just thought I would bring the concerns forward to council.
Thank you. Councilor McPhail, then Councilor Berman. Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are they going to be required for a week-long permit? We're not going to do by day. Will it automatically be a week at a time?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I greatly value the wait-and-see approach, taking the first year as a pilot and then adjusting from there. I think that's absolutely the right approach to take, and if we set them too high now, we'll adjust lower next year, or vice versa. I do hope that it's not competition so much as that it's synergy, that by bringing more people to downtown, we'll have more people frequenting all of our businesses. So it's not that we're taking a fixed pie and dividing it among more businesses, but we're using this as a tool to highlight what Saco has to offer. Therefore, more people come, and the rising tide lifts all ships, as they say, right? So I don't view it, hopefully, as competition. If it turns out it is, we'll adjust the fees in the next year. But we hope it's actually synergizing and strengthening our businesses. So thank you for your work on this.
Any further discussion? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Councilor Berman. I mean, that was certainly my hope with this. I do, as a former business owner myself along Main Street, understand where business owners can definitely feel, particularly given the current climate, that this is direct competition at a much reduced operating cost. So, like I said, I just wanted to bring it so we can say we had the discussion, but I am really comfortable with moving forward with the original proposed fees, and I'm sure I'll take some flack for that, but like I said, I view it as a pilot, and if my ear is ringing off or the phone's ringing off the hook, then we can readdress in the fall or whatnot. So I will actually withdraw my amendment.
Councilor McPhail, do you withdraw the second?
Yes.
Okay. So the amendment is withdrawn. So back to the main motion, not amended. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. Roll call vote, Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Counselor Berman.
Yes.
Counselor Hatch.
Yes.
Counselor McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item F, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 Water Resource Recovery Department budget on page 41 in your packet, assigned to Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The fiscal year 2024 operating budget for the Water Resource Recovery Department is $4,419,924, which is supported by a sewer user fee rate of $7.625 per unit. $625 per unit. Be it ordered that the City Council adopt the fiscal year 2024 Water Resource Recovery Department budget for the City of Saco, Maine as follows. Approve gross expenditures of $4,419,924 to be offset by $4,419,924 in anticipated revenues and other credits, which represents a 22% increase in the sewer user fee rate to $7.625. And further approve these appropriations as determined necessary and appropriate by the city administrator from those impact fees where available and corresponding with the estimates presented for approval in the city administrator's budget book or as adjusted and presented to council during the course of budget deliberations. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail to approve the adoption of the fiscal year 24 Water Resource Recovery Department budget. Any questions? Discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item G, approval of the B-Sub Transit budget on page 43 in your packet and assigned to Counselor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. The Biddeford-Saco Old Orchard Beach Transit Committee has approved a budget in which expenses will exceed revenues by $750,000. The Saco Council is obligated, per the terms of the B-Sub Transit Governing Agreement, to approve the amount of this request with a 33.3% share of the amount to be paid by the City of Saco in its annual appropriation. For fiscal year 2024, the City of Saco's obligation is funded by TIF districts. Be it ordered that the City of Saco approve the Biddeford-Saco Old Orchard Beach Transit budget request to fund expenditures in excess of revenues totaling $750,000, and furthermore to fund the City of Saco's share of this budget at $250,000. I move to approve the order.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Hatch, second by Counselor Johnston. Any discussion on approving the B-Sub Transit budget? Counselor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a large advocate for public transit. I believe it's a critical part of our solution to climate change and net zero emissions from transit. I believe it's a critical part of moving our growing population between downtown, neighboring regions, the beaches, tourist areas. I'm going to vote to support this budget. However, I'm deeply concerned about the loss of transit options to Camp Ellis and our beaches. I think it goes against what we're trying to do down there as we fight climate change and the rising tide. I think it hurts our attempts at economic growth and the businesses at Camp Ellis, and I think it inhibits our identity as a beach community. And I will have a great deal of trouble voting to approve the anticipated increase next year if service to Camp Ellis and our beaches isn't restored. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Counselor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Councilor Berman and I attended a meeting just prior to council relative to the trolley service to Camp Ellis. It is, as we learned, a lot more complicated than it seems. Restricting any future increases to the B-Sub budget by the City of Saco will de facto limit the contributions made by the other two municipalities. The trolley service is pretty much supported by businesses and supporting entities. The funding that this 250 provides is operational in scope for the fixed routes. So we want to be very, very cautious that we don't mix apples and oranges when we debate funding B-Soup Transit. And we also have to be fully aware that it is a tri-party agreement, whether we like it or not, and whatever funding decisions we make will have an impact across the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to echo Councilor Berman and Councilor Hatch's points, though. We do have our obligation to B-Soup. That being said, 2 points I want to make. First, I want to commend age-friendly Saco, who has picked up some of the slack that B-Soup has sort of left on the table for not being able to fund the routes into Councilor Berman's ward to the point where it's not just medical appointments, but now they're having to help folks out that just need, everyday errands, and I think it's something that should be commendable, though. But it's unfortunate, though, that age-friendly, though, with their large portfolio of taking care of some of our older folks in this community, have to kind of do yeoman's work in this regard. So I am obviously not a liaison to this organization, but I would call on the board to be a little bit more proactive in asking the executive director to look at opening up a route down there if it means limiting service in one part of the community, so some part of the community can get some service. I think as a community as a whole, I think that's something that we would we'd get behind, though, because in the interest of fairness, to have regular service across most of the town, but to leave one part completely out, it blatantly isn't fair. And it's going to, as Councilor Berman said, it's going to make us really hard for us going forward to basically give the funds out if the executive director is not making a hard decision, nor is the board pressing him to make those decisions that need to be made to keep this a viable community mode of transportation. So as I said, I'm supporting that, though, but with reservations, and I hope the board is listening, that the council's patience, though, when it comes to taking care of our residents and part of our town is starting to run pretty thin. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Councilor Gunn, I'd just like to clarify a point that you made. Age-friendly Saco is actively engaged, to their credit, in providing what would be viewed as on-demand transportation, primarily for medical appointments to Saco residents. And I sit on the board of B-Soup, as does City Administrator Cainrath. I can tell you that on-demand transportation, and we heard it at our meeting today, is on the drawing board. There are funding mechanisms that are being gone after as we speak. That has really no relevance to the trolley routes or the fixed routes. It is a separate part of transit that is well recognized as important to our community. So again, we don't want to be mixing apples and oranges, but I can assure you that as a board member of B-Soup Transit, we have that on our radar screen, and there are efforts in place presently to try to address funding. Funding and staffing continue to be the ongoing issues, and so we'll continue to try to work through those. B-Soup Transit does have access to federal grants and funds that other agencies do not, so it's there, it's being worked on, and we will try to get that resolved as soon as possible.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Counselor Gunn.
Yes.
Counselor Berman.
Yes.
Counselor Hatch.
Yes.
Counselor McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item H, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 municipal budget assigned to Counselor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On March 27th, 2023, the city administrator presented his fiscal year 2024 budget. The council met with departments and agencies to review and discuss budgets in workshops through April. Be it ordered that the City Council move to adopt an appropriation order for the adoption of the fiscal year 2024 budget, excluding all school, county, and TIF transfers per Section 6.06 and 6.07 of the Charter of the City of Saco, Maine, as follows. Approve gross municipal expenditures of $32,938,576. Expenditures to be offset by $32,938,576 in anticipated revenue and other credits, which represents $3,770,976 in anticipated state revenue sharing and $10,080,351 in other local revenues, except those revenues received from the state for homestead exemptions and the BETE reimbursement, with the net to be raised by local taxes. And further, be it ordered that the approved amount set in the following attached schedule titled City of Saco Fiscal Year 2024 Appropriation Order shall become a part of the city clerk's record and shall designate the form of the City of Saco budget for fiscal year 2024 as authorized under Section 6.04 of the Charter of the City of Saco, Maine. As further, approve these appropriations as determined necessary and appropriate by the city administrator or their designee from those special revenue funds where available and corresponding with the estimates presented for approval in the city administrator's budget or as adjusted and presented to council during the course of the budget deliberations. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Counselor McPhail. Is there a second to approve?
Second?
Counselor Hatch gets the second. And now, before we move on to fully approving the budget, there are several amendments that we need to work through that were submitted, and I thank everyone for getting their amendments submitted and in so that city staff could draft them and help make tonight a little easier. So thank you to the council and thank you to the staff that took the time to do that. So the first amendment is an amendment to fiscal year 2024 City Administrator's Budget Capital Reserve on page 46 in your packet, assigned to Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put forward an amendment to the city administrator's budget that sets aside $500,000 per year towards a fund that will accumulate and roll over to support large active transportation projects, specifically to increase modes of transportation that are people-powered but are beyond the ability of us to support in an annual budget. The use of these funds as matching funds for regional, state, and federal dollars would be encouraged. Year one of this funding should be funded by TIF districts. Be it ordered that the City Council establish a capital reserve account specifically dedicated to people-powered active transportation projects that would accumulate funds and roll over past a charter-established maximum of 3 years, and to fund this reserve in year one by increasing downtown development TIF district expenditures by $350,000 and increasing transit TIF district expenditures by $150,000 and decreasing planned return of TIF district funds to the general fund by $500,000.
Motion's been made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Discussion? Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you. I have a bit to say, so please make yourselves comfortable. As I think everybody knows, the city of Saco uses a maintenance of effort budget. This kind of presupposes that we want to take what we did last year and do it again this year with some adjustments. It really places a value on keeping doing what we've been doing. Sometimes that's great, but in this case, I think we need a radical rethinking of how we move people around our city. I think there are 4 reasons for that. One, we all know that Southern Maine is undergoing tremendous growth right now. Some of us lean into that, some of us oppose it, all of us agree that it's happening. And even if Saco closes its doors, we know that thousands and thousands of new units have been approved in Biddeford and Scarborough, who will be utilizing our city, our roads, visiting our businesses and beaches. They simply won't fit on our old transportation network. We need to rethink how we do it. We also know that society has changed. Right? We live busy, incredibly mobile lives, but we also expect to engage in recreation, to get outside, to get exercise. The pandemic changed us, and that's not going away. Saco made a declaration of climate emergency. We're seeking to reverse the effects of climate change, limit how much energy we spend. Active transit is a key element of that. And finally, there are incredible tourism benefits to creating active transit networks. Look at Bethel, look at Carabasset Valley, look at North Conway, look at northern Vermont, and you can see how investing in trails, sidewalks, bike paths can change the economics of a city. So while I applaud Public Works and Director Fox's recent efforts, and I really do, we've seen the first bike lanes painted in Saco, we have a comprehensive transit study being undertaken next year. It seems to me that's a long-term vision. The study we're funding this year will take a year to complete. We'll then get the results, analyze it, and decide how we want to proceed. That's maybe another year. We're then going to bond for any necessary changes, 6 months or a year before it passes on a ballot. If it passes, which it may not in the current climate, we then start a request for proposal or bid process. Right? Maybe another year. The best case scenario is we see changes 4 to 5 years from now. I think that's simply too long to wait. I think there's also some confusion about my amendment. This money is not earmarked for Ferry Road. My hope is that these funds help that sidewalk get built eventually. I think it's really important. I also have a daughter that walks from the middle school to the Collective Motion Art Studio along the Jenkins Road every day. I'm well aware of the need for a Jenkins Road sidewalk. She takes her life into her hands. Ocean Park Road needs a sidewalk. Other areas too. The number of sidewalks that need to get built is not a reason to vote against this amendment, but a reason to support it. That we have so much need for these kinds of projects is a reason to start now, not a reason to delay making improvements until we can undergo complicated prioritization projects. Moreover, although we don't know which project we'll start with, we already know that we'll need millions and millions and millions of dollars to fund it, whatever projects we decide, right? Setting up a fund today that can provide matching funds for federal, state, and regional dollars will put us in the best possible position, right, to acquire those funds and get these projects going. The ease of accessing these funds will also encourage city staff to look for those opportunities. In short, we already know that we need to start investing in active transit infrastructure. That need isn't going to lessen over time. The costs are not going to go down over time. We need to start now. This is really about our vision for the future and investing in it. I've heard some arguments that this isn't the perfect way to do it, and that's okay. But this is a lot better than doing nothing, so I hope you'll support it.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I think oftentimes Councilor Berman and I are in agreement on issues, speak the same language. We just have different ways of going about getting, to that point. I recognize the changes that were made from the amendment last week. Again, supportive of the concept, and appreciate staff, coming up with a more concise plan here for how what fund this would go into. But again, I think largely my points they remain unchanged from last week. We had our professional city staff stand before us and tell us the need for this study and ultimately a matrix as to how to go about implementing this. Having $500,000 just sit without staffing or the ability to expend those funds, from my perspective, again, remains a problem. In order to fund this, we're going to redirect TIF funds that were utilized or being utilized, suggested to be utilized, to offset any mill rate impact. So that creates a direct impact to the mill rate, which also is predicated on the idea of a mill rate reduction with the premise that we're going to see significant increase in valuation. That's before a revaluation coming next year. That increase, that step up, is going to have a direct hit to long-term or long-time standing residents of Saco that are looking at increased 22%, I believe, is what the sewer increase is. We have utility increases across the board. I think we're all have experienced those, and with more coming. We have record inflation. So on the surface, it sounds like a great idea, something that I normally would support. But today, where we are, I can't bring myself to support something that just as is seems, again, fiscally irresponsible. Bring this back in the summer, have more dialogue about it. Maybe we see where this study is headed, and then we have an actual roadmap for city staff. I have concerns we're just going to have money tied up in an account with a city staff that's responsible for actually expending those funds, where it just accumulates. So it's one of those examples I feel we're talking out of both sides of our mouths, where we talk about affordability and keeping seniors in home, but then we also knowingly and willingly increase the mill rate, right? And I understand the intent, and it's a lofty goal, and one, again, that I would support, but until we have it all worked out, I just can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Purdy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along the same lines as Councilor Johnson, I like the idea behind this. I like the approach. I think the details are something that we should probably put into a workshop relatively soon to try to hash something out. But it comes down to dollars and cents. I can't get behind somewhere between another 2 and 2.5% increase in the tax rate right now. Like I said, in the future, I think it's an approach we need to seriously look at and hash out the details. But unfortunately, tonight, I just can't vote for it. Thank you.
Glennis, could you maybe explain the mill rate calculator for everyone and just kind of test what an approval would mean if the council was to approve that?
Certainly. So what you're seeing at the top of the screen is a grid that allows the city council to compare numbers across several levels of budget approval, starting with 2023, what was approved for last year, what was put into the 2024 maintenance of effort budget, what was put into the 2024 city admin budget, and then we have 2024 council budget. These are the numbers that will move this evening based on what council chooses to approve from the amendments that are listed below. I do have highlighted the net municipal tax levy change. So there are two numbers that we talk about in the budget approval process. We talk about the mill rate and we talk about the net municipal tax levy. The mill rate is the total tax levy divided by property valuation. And you can see that at the outset, the city council mill rate of 14.53 is significantly lower already than the prior year mill rate of 18.33. That's not because we've had a significant drop in the total tax levy. That's because the property valuation has gone up significantly. The actual change to the tax levy is highlighted in yellow on the right-hand side of the grid. And we calculate separately the net municipal tax levy change for the city, for the school, and then overall. Should the council wish to approve Councilor Berman's amendment, the net municipal tax levy would increase by 4.2% as opposed to the current recommended budget, which only increases the net municipal tax levy by 3.2%. So it's about a full percentage point on the net municipal tax levy.
Thank you very much. Do we know roughly what the valuation, where the valuation is coming in?
I do not have any firm estimates from assessing other than we were looking at about 30% increase in property valuation. As a reminder, That property valuation increase does change. Some properties may go up a little bit more, some properties may go up a little bit less, but we do have to set the property valuation fairly close to market rates, and market rate for housing in Saco is significant right now. So that does change the property valuation, but your property valuation change does not necessarily change your tax bill, because the tax bill is set with the tax levy and then distributed among households based on the relative valuation of each household.
So based on the 4.2% increase to the net tax levy, one could be looking at $15.77 per month increase in their tax bill, roughly, without knowing the full valuations.
That's correct. That's the estimate that I have.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Anyone that hasn't spoken? Okay, Councilor Berman, then, Councilor Hatch, you haven't spoken. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle, I appreciate that. I'm just going to dovetail with Councilor Johnson and Councilor Purdy, comments I made last week. I want the public to know that I really do believe this is a good idea, but I have lived long enough to know the devil's in the details, and I don't see enough detail here for me to allocate $500,000 in a budget. We have issues relative to decision-making framework, how to prioritize. We do know that we will be having a survey completed, which I think would be extremely helpful to this cause. We have no discussion about guidelines in terms of policies regarding disbursements for future councils to refer to when we're talking about developing funds that can accrue in, I'm not going to say in perpetuity, but in long periods of time. It's important that those guidelines be well-defined and in place. So I am going to also echo Councilor Purdy's suggestion that, and I'm planning to make that suggestion when we get to the end of our meeting and council discussion relative to establishing as soon as possible a workshop that will give us an opportunity to vet these details and come up with hopefully some more information and maybe some updates on our survey. And I know that survey is a ways off, so I think that I'm not really feeling comfortable taking $500,000 and putting it aside without all that detail being defined for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Berman, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor Berman.
I'll be much quicker this time. Some of the neighbors invited us to walk down Ferry Road last week. Of course, I do that regularly. I took my weekly bike ride down Ferry Road on Saturday, where I could feel the rush of cars past me, as I always do. I also drove back down in my car later that evening on a different trip, so I got to experience both sides of kind of the harrowing adventure of trying to not hit the bikes, but also not get hit by the oncoming traffic. I invite everybody to experience that the same. Now, I don't know about my fellow councilors, but the number one complaint I hear is about traffic and speeding. Every car we pull off the road and onto a bicycle or onto their shoes is one less car clogging our roads, one less car causing the road rage, one less car, right, we have to deal with in traffic. I fully expect us to have a workshop. We would need to on these issues. I suggest we do the workshop after we allocate the money, not before. Otherwise, it's another year before the money can be allocated. But finally, and regardless of whether we support this amendment tonight or not, I'm glad the discussion has started, and I hope this council starts taking active transit really seriously. We're going to need to. Right? The world's moving in that way. Southern Maine is moving in that way. And kicking the can down the road year after year after year isn't going to do the city any favors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I will scratch what I was originally going to say. I think we've kind of arrived at conclusion, but I do want to thank Councilor Berman for bringing it forward, because I do think it's an important discussion, and really it seems the only way we get these wheels moving is by throwing them out on the floor and discussing them. So I look forward to having that discussion this summer. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this amendment, amendment number 1? Roll call vote on amendment number 1 on the capital reserve. Council Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
No.
Councilor Gunn.
No.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
No.
Councilor McPhail.
No.
Councilor Johnston.
No.
Motion fails. That brings us to item 2. It's an amendment to fiscal year 2024 city administrator's budget for age-friendly, and that is on page 47 in your packet. And I believe there was 2 amendments put forward, but I think there was a friendly amendment, and I think Councilor Hatch is going to read that.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. I would like to put forth, with my councilor colleague McPhail, I'd like to put forth an amendment to the city administrator's budget that adds $5,000 to age-friendly Saco-supported entities budget allocation of $64,000 to get the total to $69,000 they originally requested. And then Councilor McPhail has suggested another $5,000 for the age-friendly bike program, for a total of $74,000 in fiscal year 2024. Be it ordered that the City Council increase 1062/500717/0000 age-friendly Saco by $10,000.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Gunn. Any discussion on the age-friendly amendment? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 3, amendment to fiscal year 2024 city administrator's budget for pedestrian improvements on page 48 in your packet and assigned to Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put forward an amendment to the city administrator's budget that increases pedestrian safety along Ferry Road and throughout the city of Saco. Be it ordered that the city council increase the transit TIF district expenditure by $20,000 for pedestrian and traffic safety, and decrease planned return of TIF district funds to the general fund by $20,000.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Part of the reason for putting this amendment forward is based on the conversation that started with Councilor Berman's amendment for the $500,000. Even though I voted no on that, it is basically because of all the reasons that we expressed. It is by no means something that is not important to all of us. We want to move forward with that, but we just need to make sure that we're doing it in the correct way. So my amendment of this $20,000 is to assure the residents of Ferry Road and Upper Camp Ellis, that area, that we're not forgetting about this. It is not going to go away. We know the importance, and we do want to move forward, but just making sure that everything is completed the way that it should be done. So as an immediate, visible, hopefully, just to make sure that we get something out there, at least to start a process, and that would be right now a visual notice to pedestrians as well as the motorist. So I'm hoping that, again, my no vote to Councilor Berman's is by no means minimizing the importance that we know needs to be done and taken care of on Ferry Road.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, I support this also. I think that anybody that has attended any of our traffic safety meetings definitely would attest to the fact that, safety, pedestrian safety of all kinds is definitely a need, and we have pretty well-versed city staff now at implementing some of these measures, and they seem successful from my viewpoint. So I would trust that Director Fox and his crews probably could start to make some immediate changes to the areas that we've spoken of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Roll call vote, Counselor Archer.
Aye.
Counselor Purdy.
Yes.
Counselor Gunn.
Yes.
Counselor Berman.
Yes.
Counselor Hatch.
Yes.
Counselor McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 4, an amendment to fiscal year 2024 City Administrator's Budget, Saco Main Street, on page 49 in your packet, assigned to Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put forward an amendment to the city administrator's budget that reduces the Saco Main Street budget. Be it ordered that the city council decrease the funding for Saco Main Street by $29,000 and increase the return of funds to the general fund from the downtown TIF district by $29,000.
Motion's been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Any discussion? Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to begin by, of course, giving my respect and admiration for the work that Saco Main Street has done over the last several years. I don't want my amendment to in any way be construed as punitive or anything of that nature. Under the last two directors, and Director Presby's just got started though, but I expect great things from her, has become a wonderful part of our community in terms of the events that they put on and the sense of community that it does foster. Now, be that as it may, in terms of where we are in terms of their budget. A couple of years ago, we increased their budget to cover a third position, a second full-time position, and the intent of that position was for that person it was assumed that person was going to become the next director of Saco Main Street. Now, obviously, there's been some discussions behind the scenes that nothing was ever promised or things of that nature, but that's how it was presented to this council. Fast forward to now, there is a full-time position and a part-time position. The person who was in that third position, it didn't work out, and they've left Saco Main Street. The rationale for that budget increase was what brought them to $100,000, and the rationale is now gone. Now, as a separate independent organization, we are in no position to really hold Saco Main Street accountable for how it spends its money. It proposes what it wants to spend it on, and we agree to it, and if things come up, that is the nature of being an independent organization. However, we're in a situation for the last several years, Saco Main Street, whether they've been unable to or just have not decided to put their focus on it, we have not seen the level of development, that is fundraising, that one would expect to see from an organization that has gotten, excuse me, as much merits as it's gotten from Augusta and other places. And it compares, unfortunately, poorly to our neighbors across the river, Heart of Biddeford, who have been able to keep up with that fundraising. Now, I'm in the situation here where if you're not going to fundraise, or if you're going to wait 6 years to do the fundraising, at what point does the city of Saco say, wait a second, because of all other factors, you keep coming to us, whether holding it at $100,000, what does it mean in the future with inflation and other things like that? Are you going to ask for more money? And with the expectation that we will do the fundraising next year. Well, if you're funding something at 80%, like we are funding them at 80%, it is prudent, since we're handling the taxpayers' money, to expect something on our return. And now, in terms of the events they put on, it's wonderful, it's great. But in terms of them to do some of the lifting, by comparison, you have the library, which we appoint their board, but they do plenty of fundraising, and they pay their they pay their means. I pointed out Age Friendly. Director there doesn't get a dime though, and they do Yellman's work though in terms of helping folks out. And because they've picked up the bicycle program from Saco Main Street, that's why I was more than enthusiastic to support their increase in budget though. So my point is, like I said, it's not punitive. On the contrary, I think we're at a position now where, especially where they have reduced their footprint As I said, they've given up the car show, the Scoop, bicycle program. I think it's prudent to get them in a position where they are, for lack of a better term, encouraged to take the fundraising part of it a little bit more seriously. Now, that being said, if the need arises for them to need more funds in the immediate future, and they want to come back to the council and ask for that, I'm completely open to that. I think that is a reasonable, prudent way to handle the people's money when it comes to giving $70,000, $71,000, which is not chump change by any measure. It's I don't know, $70,000 is, a little bit of money to people. It's not, certainly is to me. If they want to come back and ask us for more money at mid-year for other purposes, I am more than open to that, though. If anything, it will demonstrate a level of responsibility in terms of their fundraising, and if the council thinks that that's a good idea, then we can go forward. But I think right now, in terms of where they have been in terms of their fundraising, I think it's just a prudent move to make, and I think the money could be better used going back in the TIF. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little beside myself right now with this amendment. I'm the liaison from the council to Saco Main Street. I knew there'd be some questions asked of Saco Main Street, or I thought there were, and I hoped to speak after those questions, to speak in support of some of the dynamic changes I've seen in my time watching them over the last couple months. I was shocked when there were no questions. Look, I think there are two major issues with this amendment, one of process and one of effect. In terms of process, I ran on a platform of transparency. You don't have to like what I'm doing, but I make my decisions in public, where my constituents and those who vote for me know the decision I'm making and know why I'm making it. My values are out there for all to see. It's critical, those of us who value transparency, to avoid even the appearance of backroom deals or decisions being made not on this dais. It doesn't take long on Facebook to realize there are a number of citizens who still doubt us in that regard. To me, that raises the alarms when no questions are asked of an organization and then an amendment comes to the floor at the 11th hour seeking to cut their budget. How can we say that we're making decisions in the public view, allow our constituents to respond with their thoughts, concerns, and support, and indeed give Saco Main Street, the organization itself, the ability to respond to these concerns? I have trouble believing that my fellow councilors, many of whom also ran on platforms of transparency, could support what really appears to be an amendment timed to avoid public input and avoid the ability of the organization to respond proactively. To me, that is shocking. Now, Saco Main Street is not beyond critique, but if we want them to succeed, they do need resources. And indeed, many of the critiques I just heard are already being addressed, and we're at the top of the new executive director's list. They've brought in expert fundraisers to train them and teach them, and her first act was to set up a fundraising committee. They've been highly responsive to the concerns, which my fellow councilors would know if they had bothered to ask any questions after the presentation, which they did not. I'm also deeply concerned about the effects of cutting a quarter of Saco Main Street's budget. To grow, to enhance what they do, requires funds. You can't cut your way into growth. We can't cut their budget and expect them to do more. And indeed, as we heard a few minutes ago, these funds that city provides them largely support 2 staff members' salary. Well, this amendment doesn't go so far as to say which staff member's salary should be cut or should be let go. That will be the effect of this amendment. It's important when you vote yes to think about that and to ask yourself which aspects of the job that Saco Main Street does today do we not think it should be doing. I believe it would help to give additional specificity. But most importantly, gutting will not help Saco. It will not help our downtown become vibrant. It will not help our economic development. It will not help our festivals and families and community come together. Look, 4 years ago, they got a budget increase. The cost of living has gone up 6, 7, 8% ever since. That eats up that entire budget increase. But importantly, when groups like Saco Main Street, when groups like Age-Friendly Saco, when groups like the library come to City Council and ask for funding, they're not begging for funding, they're making an offer. They're offering the city essential services that we need to make our community better. And they're telling us how much those services cost to deliver if we value them. I value Saco Main Street. I think many of our residents value Saco Main Street. I want them to be able to continue their work, continue to grow and improve, and become the organization that we know they can be. They've already shown efforts in that regard, and I'd encourage my fellow councilors to support them by voting no on this amendment.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I certainly can appreciate the discussion. I think I've been fairly consistent over the better part of at least 5 years on trying to get a better understanding on the financials of Saco Main Street. You know, as it was indicated earlier tonight, I've been here a little while, so I can remember the 2014 budget of $38,000 or thereabouts for, you know, what the city contributed. That steadily increased to the $100,000 that it's at today, but it was done in a way that were incremental increases that were for specific uses that somehow year after year got built into the budget and it just compounded. And that was always my concern. I think there was members of council at times, certainly the public, with concerns about exactly how those funds were expended. In this particular case, this budget cycle, we were provided with financials that I found very helpful. It's one of the reasons I personally didn't have any questions. It kind of laid out, and from reviewing it, it made it seem pretty clear and obvious to me that these funds were specific to the operations of the organization, as Councilor Berman indicated. We're talking about the direct salaries of the individuals. You start cutting that, even $29,000, and you're literally talking about, I would assume, our half-time employee. So while I believe it's not intended to be punitive, in a way it is, in the end. It's directly punitive to one individual, but I would think it's punitive to the organization as a whole moving forward. So again, me personally, I'm comfortable with what's been presented. I'm comfortable with the $100,000 going forward. I would add that if there's going to be future requests, you know, those go through the council process and they don't just get baked into the annual request. Like, we have an understanding as to why, you know, those funds are needed. But again, $29,000 from $100,000 is an awful lot for them to move forward under new leadership. So to me, it's a reset, and I'm supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, rarely do I ever pre-write my thoughts for discussion, but tonight I did not want us to succumb to any emotion and instead needed to focus directly on the facts at hand. Over the last 7 years, there is no one in this room tonight that has put more volunteer hours for Saco Main Street than I have. From volunteering at all festivals, from setup to tear down, working at the Scoop part-time, to serving on boards and subcommittees. I have planted the flowers on Main Street as a member of the design committee, both old and new planters, which were funded by the city upon request in 2019. I've put up and taken down the lights, signs, cleaned the parking lots in the post office park, and I've given my heart and soul for years to our downtown organization. And as such, I have served on 2 annual assessments with the Maine Downtown Foundation and the Maine Downtown Center with Director Ann Ball. Based on these annual assessments, one of my major concerns as a counselor has always been the single source of funding. The MDF, which Saco Main Street is an accredited member, guides their mission with a 4-point approach, as described in the budget presentation. But not mentioned is under that approach, they advocate and require a 3-legged approach to funding, and that is the 1/3 rule. Funding should be based on 33.33% from the public, 33.33% from grants, and 33.33% from the municipal funding. This is to ensure the long-term stability of the organization. SMS has never met that recommendation. Council recently received a letter of support from Director Ball, which states again that this year they fell short of the requirement, and again it has been recommended, and as I quote, "It is the best practice that the funding from the Main Street organization to include support from municipality, residents, businesses, and grants." I did receive an update from Director Presby today, and I do know that she is going for her training for grant writing. Unfortunately, that will be a future progress coming forward, and that under a new development plan, they have allocated about, or assumed 11,000 in additional funding sources for that. But currently, the city level of funding is at 80%, and it's considered unsustainable as to a long-term single-source funding. The expanded money allocated through the TIF funds in 2020, which I was a part of as a liaison and volunteer to Main Street at the time, from then executive director, was for the expressed intent of creating a 3rd position to accompany the ED, and whose focus was for the public and business outreach and capital funding after a succession plan was completed. The city has been informed that there are no plans to create or hire that position, and that is where it will be through a new development group formed of volunteers. And based on that information, what I'm in supporting is not a reduction of the funding, but rather a return to the previous level of funding that was sustainable prior to the 2020 hiring commitment. This should have no impact on the programs already provided with sponsorship sources for the events.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item, Councilor Purdy?
Thank you. The increase to $100,000 a couple of years ago was a difficult vote for me. I was really wavering on that one, and I think Council Johnson summed it up well when, during the discussions, was that once the money's been allocated, it's going to be very difficult to unallocate it. This one's been bouncing around my head an awful lot, and at the end of it, I've got to go with the correspondence I've received from constituents in my ward especially, that don't want to see us cut the funding, and I am here as a representative of them, and so I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've been a counselor for going into my 6th year now, and I remember when the budget was around 40, and at that given time, there was a directive kind of by the council, an agreement rather than a directive to start trying to fundraise. Raise money on your own, let's help you grow. Well, a couple of years ago, we did try to fundraise. We did it through a business. There was, not we as me personally, but the organization did it through a business. They attempted to try a new funding model, which was the ice cream shop. It was deemed, most recently, not to be the best use of nonprofit expenditures. So for me, I think they attempted, and well, one can say failed, right? They tried something, it didn't work out. That's the best way to say it. And I think at this time to cut it, now recognizing that there's a heavy focus on fundraising, I think they're well informed of that. Cutting it now may actually cut the head off of the organization, and that's not what I want to do. There's moving forward of trying to find additional resources, again, grant writing. They've already had a speaker on how to improve. I know for a fact that she's working with the Chamber and Heart of Biddeford. So she's trying, the organization is trying different ways to do it. So that's why I'm going to go no for this year, but there is an expectation of fundraising from me, and I just wanted to make sure that's clear. But I think cutting a third of your budget when there's evidence of you trying to fundraise as an organization would be just a tad too harsh at this moment, but next year could be a different story. I could change my mind, okay? So I'm going to vote no, but there's an expectation of effort and growth.
Any further discussion, Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. I am sitting on the fence here, and I'm looking at the budget that was submitted with the request for 2023. I see the $100,000 city allocation. I understand completely how the 71,000 could be a justifiable number based on what's happened recently. But what I see missing from the budget is any allocation, any amount, unless I'm reading it incorrectly, any amount for corporate sponsors and grants. And we've talked about the grant process, and it sounds like that's in gear. And did I hear that 11,000 was the number that seems to be in play? But I don't see anything on the corporate sponsor line. And according to my evaluation of the tax returns, which only gave me 2021, there was, actually I've got your January, December 2022 numbers of 23,000 and some change for business sponsorships, and I don't see that in your current budget. So I guess what's in my head is that if we go to 71 and give you an opportunity to work your grants and work your corporate sponsorships, and you still fall a little bit short, I think I'm dovetailing to a comment that Councilor Gunn made, give you the opportunity to come back and indicate to us that you just haven't made it. And maybe at that point, we could consider an allocation of an additional amount that is not likely to be 29,000, but probably something less than that. So that's just a compromise thought that I had in my head. Just came to me this evening, so I didn't have a chance to communicate with anybody about that. So just my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilor Berman.
Yeah, just a couple of quick points. I find it problematic that questions are being raised about the budget at a time when the organization can't respond. There was a time to ask questions about the budget when they could, and there were 0 questions asked. Now, as I understand it, a lot of the corporate sponsorships go to pay for the events themselves, right? That the operating funds generally come out of the city allocation. And so when they break down the budget by event, you can easily see the corporate sponsorships that come in towards individual events. That may not be the sheet that Councilor Hatch was looking at. Nevertheless, there's been robust corporate sponsorship of events over the past year, and continues to be robust plans to continue and expand that funding going forward. I'd also just remind everybody that while 0 questions were asked 2 weeks ago when they presented, there's another really important number, and that's 3. That's the number of executive directors they've had over the past few years, including a director-free period. So when we speak to the you of Saco Main Street, I think we should be clear who we're speaking to. Are we speaking about the organization that existed 2 directors ago, the organization that was directorless for a while, the organization that occurred over the preceding executive director, or the organization now with a largely new board and a largely new executive director? It seems like a lot to ask to hold an organization that's 2 directors and 50% of their board later accountable for the promises made by a prior incarnation. And as to the assertion that going back to the 2019 budget shouldn't affect their ability to engage in their activities, I question whether any organization would be able to return to their 2019 budget right now, after 3 or 4 years of the largest inflation that we've seen in decades. Right? To cut their budget by 25% at a time when we've seen 25 or 30% increase in costs over that same period is not a small budget. It doesn't take them back to an earlier level of funding. It decimates their ability to engage in their mission, given the change in cost that's occurred over that period. It's just, you simply can't move backwards, right? The city increases its budget as a matter of course every year. So too must all organizations that seek city funding. Now, should they increase their fundraising? Of course they should, right? But they're setting an annual budget right now based on our contribution. To suggest they can set an annual budget based on promises that maybe if they come back and ask for more, that money might or might not be there, they can't plan that way. They can't put in, plan their events that way. They can't plan to move forward that way. They can't plan to staff that way. That's simply not a feasible suggestion. Your organizations couldn't work that way, neither can theirs. All right. I strongly encourage us to fund the entire budget. I am certain they've gotten the message and will respond to our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I certainly can understand Councilor's concerns about fundraising. But again, that predates the current staff that's in place. And as Councilor Berman just pointed out, I think it's loud and clear. As I said earlier, I've been here a while. I can go back to the Dyer Library's budget of FY14, and it's doubled the city contribution. So while they have donations, aren't nearly where one may want also. So, and I think that, that's something I hear loud and clear from members of the public every year. I support the library, so I come out here and I vote in favor of it. But there certainly are those out there that are detractors, and I think the director even made reference to that during her budget presentation several weeks ago. She can remember budgets that were not nearly as seamless as this current council and probably the last 5 or 6. So again, I understand that desire. I have that same desire. I look at this as, again, as a reset. We start with the 100,000. If we want to go back, I can actually tell you that when Saco Spirit started, there was no indication that the city would annually fund it. It was seed money in the beginning. It's become that way, and I think, council after council, we've supported it because we've recognized the value there. I can sit up here and, like I said, go back 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Oftentimes I find myself doing that, but I also have to bring myself to the reality, as Councilor Berman said, none of us can probably go back to budgets we had 5 years ago. So with that indication that this is the 100,000 that we're willing to fund, and they're on their own to figure out in future years, unless there's a very specific need, I can support that, and I hope the rest of you all will too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? No further discussion. Roll call vote on the amendment, and that is amendment number 4. Councilor Archer.
No.
Councilor Purdy.
No.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
No.
Councilor Hatch.
No.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
No.
Motion fails. That brings us to item 5, an amendment to fiscal year 2024 city administrator's budget for an increase to Seeds of Hope on page 50 in your packet, assigned to Councilor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put forward an amendment to the city administrator's budget that increases Seeds of Hope by $3,000 to the requested $15,000 of funding. Be it ordered that the City Council increase account 1062-5007180000 Seeds of Hope by $3,000.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion on this? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. It's a small increase. I would like to think we're all supportive of this. I think, when you look at the total of the budget, again, it's a pretty small ask. This is one of really one organization that I know of in this area that provides these services. I think if I can be candid, there's definitely an increase of need. I recognize that oftentimes we speak to things up here with very little personal knowledge. But for me personally, I've come just in the last several weeks to see former classmates of mine living on the street. I have 3 constituents that were housed. They lost their housing and they're currently living in their cars. I will say they remain residents of Ward 7, but they are living in their cars because they just can't afford any of the housing. It means they're left trying to find places to shower and do their daily needs. It kind of hits home to me. I'm concerned about what's going to happen with the Diamond Park development, or the Diamond development in Biddeford, because a lot of these people are currently living there. So if I had it my way, I'd throw more money at this, and I think it's something that really we should be thinking about in future years. The ask was $15,000, so that's what I'll support, but I would like to get with that director and really kind of figure out what the real needs are. Thank you.
Thank you. City Administrator Kinrath.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also just want to speak in support of this. I recently had the opportunity to go over to Seeds of Hope and meet with our new executive director and tour their facility again, which I hadn't done for a couple of years. And they do, I will let you know, they do a lot with very little. And they are one of the few organizations in this area that are able to offer some of the services that they do. They're one of the only overnight shelters during cold weather. They were a tremendous community partner of ours during the severe cold weather we had back in February. So I think this is money well spent. These issues with housing and the unhoused are obviously been emerging over the past couple of years and becoming even more of a greater problem for this area as well as the state and the country. So I think this is money well spent. They do some great work. They have a very eager and active new executive director to take over from a previous excellent executive director. So again, I would just urge support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you. I'll actually be short this time. I'm also supportive. It also appears that Councilor Johnston took the time to read through the letters of request and note where they differed from the city administrator's allocation, which just continued last year's allocation as part of his maintenance of effort. So I appreciate Councilor Johnston taking the time to do that, find the discrepancies, and remedy the ones that he thought were beneficial.
Any further discussion on this item, increasing the funding for Seeds of Hope by $3,000? Nobody seeking recognition, roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 6, or Amendment 6, and that's the amendment to fiscal year 2024 City Administrator's Budget for the BPAC, and that is on page 51 in the packet, assigned to Councilor Johnston.
I'd like to propose an amendment that would increase the Camp Ellis Mitigation Fund back to the original funded amount from several years ago of $25,000. Be it ordered that the City Council increase account 106805009510000, transfer to Special Revenue Fund by $6,400, and decrease account 106405004000000 contingency by $6,450.
Councilor Johnston, I think you're one ahead of us. We're on the amendment to fiscal year 2024
Apparently, I want to just
for the
read all night.
BPAD Commission.
You guys could have saved me the trouble. I would like to put forward an amendment to the City Council, or to the City Administrator's budget that increases the Saco Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee by $200 to the requested $1,200 of funding. Be it ordered that the City Council increase account 106205007250000 Saco BPAG by $200.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Councilor Berman.
No, just to note that as the liaison to the Saco BPAC, it's an incredibly active, engaged, passionate group that really is trying to bring about transformation in how people get around Saco. They are one of the more effective committees I liaison to, and this money will be put to good use.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. So just going back to that concept of funding some of these organizations at a flat level, I mean, I moved forward what the request was, but at the same time, looking at some of those letters, I noticed that the art committee, they're funded at $5,000. So I don't want to necessarily encourage, spending money they can't, but I think that $5,000 doesn't go that far. $12,000 or $1,200 goes even less. So I would suggest to Councilor Berman as a liaison that perhaps next year they make the request of $5,000, so we stop having these fluctuations in numbers, and it's, it becomes, as you said, if you don't dig down and read every letter, you lose sight of what the real request is. So that's just for information purposes. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 7, or Amendment 7, and that is amendment to fiscal year 2024 City Administrator's Budget for Camp Ellis, page 52, and assigned to Counselor Johnston.
I would like to propose an amendment that would increase the Camp Ellis mitigation fund back to the original funded amount from several years ago of $25,000. Be it ordered, the City Council increase account 10680500951000000, transfer to special revenue fund by $6,400, and decrease account 106405040000000 contingency by $6,400.
That number is 6,450.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Any discussion? Counselor Berman.
Also in favor of this amendment. As we know, the Army Corps of Engineers will be here on Monday, meeting with us, giving us an updated timeline and process, which will move to our draft partnership agreement. We expect the process of negotiating that partnership agreement may be long and it may be costly, and setting aside dollars to help facilitate that, I think is a wise move at this stage as we move towards long-term remediation of the issues at the jetty.
Thank you. And Counselor Johnston.
Thank you. Just the background on this, several years ago, I believe it was 2018 or 2019, Council created this fund for use in really documenting what we were expending for litigation purposes or consulting purposes for Camp Ellis, obviously the mitigation of Camp Ellis. So as Council Berman indicated, we're going to start those negotiations off, and the idea was just top off the fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to amendment number 8. It's an amendment to fiscal year 2024 City Administrator's Budget on page 53. And if you have any last-minute amendments, now is the time. This is good. No last-minute amendments. We'll move on. And that is to H8, and that is, item I, and that's the adoption of back to the main motion, now as amended 5 times. On the main motion of adopting the fiscal year 2024 municipal budget as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item I, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 to 2028 capital program on page 54. Counselor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On March 27th, 2023, the city administrator presented the FY24 budget, which included as Section 3 of the overall budget, the 5-year capital program. The finance director notes that final cost for the 2024 equipment may come in slightly higher or slightly lower than the figure set out in Section 3 due to rapidly fluctuating market conditions, and therefore the suggested motion includes an allowance to account for these disparities of up to but not more than 10%. Be it ordered that the City Council approve FY24 through FY2028 capital program as presented by the City Administrator and subsequently amended by City Council. Such capital program to also include up to but not more than a 10% allowance for lease purchase costs on 2024 equipment, Any savings to be applied to capital program costs for FY 2024 through FY 2028.
Motion's been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hatch. Before we get into the discussion, there is an amendment, number 1, to the fiscal year 2024-28 capital program for city copiers on page 55 and assigned to Counselor Johnston.
I'd like to put forward an amendment to fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2028 capital program that pulls forward the city copier replacement financing from fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2024. The IT director has indicated that return of the current copiers will cover 1 year of the lease agreement, so no change in financing costs will result from this change. Be it ordered that the City Council approve capital financing to replace city copiers in fiscal year 2024 rather than fiscal year 2025.
Motion's been made on the amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hatch. Any discussion on the amendment only? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
The amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion now as amended. Any discussion? With no discussion, roll call vote on the main motion as amended. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item J on the agenda, and that is on page 56, a council resolution approving the school budget for fiscal year 2023-2024, assigned to Counselor Johnston.
All right, thank you. The school board approved the budget for fiscal year 2024 and has forwarded said budget to City Council for review and approval. Be it resolved pursuant to Title 20A, Sections 2307, 1485, 15690, that the following school budget cost centers be adopted and approved for expenditure for fiscal year 2023 through 2024. Regular instruction of $27,375,060. Special education, $11,193,433. Career and technical education of $0. Other instruction, $204,007. Student and staff support, $2,885,893. System administration of $1,112,113. School administration, the previous was system administration. School administration of $1,321,106. Transportation and buses of $2,118,773. Facilities maintenance of $3,383,671. Debt service and other commitments of $0. All other expenditures, $11,900. The sum of $49,605,956 be appropriated for the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, and the sum of $20,215,413 be raised as the city's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act in accordance with Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A, Section 15688, state mandated explanation. The city's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act is the amount of money determined by state law to be the minimum amount the city must raise in order to receive the full amount of state dollars. The sum of $0 be raised and appropriated for the annual payments on debt service previously approved by the city's voters for non-state funded school construction projects and non-state funded portions of school construction projects in addition to the funds appropriated as the local share of the city's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12. State mandated explanation, non-state funded debt service is the amount of money needed for the annual payments on the city's long-term debt for major capital school construction projects that are not approved for state subsidy. The bonding of this long-term debt was previously approved by city voters or other legislative body. The school board be authorized to expend $49,605,957 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, from the city's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, non-state funded school construction projects, additional local funds for school purposes under the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 15690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidies, and other receipts for the support of schools, and the school board be authorized to expend such other sums as may be received from federal and state grants and/or programs and/or other sources during the fiscal year for school purposes, provided that such grants, programs, or other sources do not require the expenditures of other funds not previously appropriated. After all that, I move to approve the resolution.
Motion's been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Before we vote on the main motion, there are a couple of amendments that we need to work through here. Amendment 1 is a council resolution approving additional local funds for the school budget fiscal year 2023-2024, signed to Councilor Berman on page 58 in your packet.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The school board approved a budget for the fiscal year 2023-24 and has forwarded said budget to the city council for review and approval. Be it resolved that $9,871,484 be raised and appropriated in additional local funds, which exceeds the state essential programs and services allocation model by $9,871,484 as required to fund the budget recommended by the school board. State mandated explanation. The additional local funds are those locally raised funds over and above the city's local contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, and local amounts raised for the annual payment on non-state funded debt service that will help achieve the school department budget for educational programs. School board's statement of reasons for exceeding Essential Programs and Services allocation model. The school budget proposed for the fiscal year exceeds the state's funding allocation model for various reasons. In general, 1, the model does not recognize the actual cost to operate and maintain the school programs and curriculum. 2, the state is not funding the model at 55% of the actual total cost of education. 3, the state has added certain costs to the model without increasing available funding, such as the state share of teacher retirement costs. 4, the state has reduced or eliminated funding for costs necessary to operate the schools by such means as changing the student-teacher ratio, the student ed tech, and other student-staff ratios, and reducing funding for administrative costs. Note that Title 20A, Section 15671A5 and B requires a separate recorded vote for those additional local funds and approval by a majority of the full council. Section 15690 provides for the school board statement of reasons to accompany the article as approved by council. I move to approve the resolution.
Motion's been made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to approve the resolution for additional local funds. Brings us to item 2, council resolution approving adult education budget fiscal year 2023-2024, signed to Councilor Hatch on page 59 in your packet.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. The recitations are getting shorter, and I get the shortest one, so thank you. The school board approved the budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024 and has forwarded said budget to City Council for review and approval. Be it resolved that $161,766 be appropriated for adult education and that $161,766 be raised as the local share, with authorization to expend any additional incidental or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for well-being of the adult education program. Note that the adult education budget is separate from the school operating budget. I move to approve the resolution.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Resolution number 2 passes 7-0. So now back to the main motion on the council resolution approving the entire school budget for 2023, 2024. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item K on page 60 in your packet, and that's to set the fiscal year 2024 property tax due dates and interest rates assigned to Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under Title 36 MRSA, Section 205, a municipality may, by vote, determine the interest rate that shall apply to delinquent taxes committed during the taxable year until those taxes are paid in full. The Treasurer of the State of Maine determined that the maximum rate of interest that can be charged per Title 36 MRSA, Section 5054, for the taxable year 2023, tax date being 4/1/2023, is 8%. Therefore, for the fiscal year 2024 tax commitment, the maximum rate allowed is 8%. City Council has elected to set an interest rate of 8% for fiscal year 2023. Under Title 36 MRSA, Section 506 and 506A, a municipality may set the interest rates for overpayment of taxes at no less than the delinquent tax rate minus 4 points and authorize the prepayment of taxes. Therefore, we are requesting that the City Council set the interest rate of 4% for the overpayment of fiscal year 2024 taxes and authorize the application of any prepayment of taxes directly to the tax account as they have received without having to pay interest on those prepayments. Tax payments due dates are as followed. First half, 9/8/23, interest accruing from 9/11/23. Second half, 3/8/24, interest accruing from 3/11/24. Amendment to the Easy Pass pay due date, continuation of the Easy Pay program. Amendment to Easy Pay due dates, continuation of the Easy Pay program for fiscal year 2024 with 8 monthly payments starting September 15th, 2023 and ending April 15th, 2024. Be it ordered that the City Council set the interest rate for delinquent fiscal year 2024 property taxes at 8%, set the refund interest rate of fiscal year 2024 tax payments at 4%, and authorize the tax collector to accept prepayments of taxes not yet committed without having to pay interest on those prepayments, and to establish the due dates for tax payments as followed. Payment for the first half due on September 8th, 2023, with interest occurring from September 11th, 2023, and payment for the second half due on March 8th, 2024, with interest accruing from March 11th, 2024. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item L, and that's to reconfirm the authority to apply tax payments to the oldest outstanding tax on page 62 in your packet and assigned to Counselor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. On October 6, 1986, the City Council approved a tax collection policy which allowed the treasurer or the tax collector to apply tax payments received from an individual to the oldest unpaid tax bill first. We would like to reconfirm the existing policy with the onset of a new tax year. The tax collection policy is that municipal officers of the City of Saco have approved the request of the municipal treasurer and the tax collector that any tax payment received from an individual as payment for any property tax or personal property be applied against outstanding or delinquent taxes due on that property in chronological order, beginning with the oldest unpaid tax bill. Taxes may not be applied to a period for which abatement request or appeal has not been resolved unless approved in writing by the taxpayer. Also, on the 30-day lien notice or 45 to 30-day foreclosure notice, a statement will be added indicating the city's tax collection policy. Be it ordered that the City Council accept the tax collection policy as presented pursuant to Title 36 MRSA Section 906. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hanch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That concludes the agenda items and brings us to item 10, which is new business, and that's on page 63, and we're going to have a presentation from Director Salas on the March budget update.
Good evening. So I am here to present to you an update on the fiscal year 2023 budget through March. This presentation, you might say a couple weeks delayed just due to sort of catching up on some items once the finance department had become fully staffed. But I am pleased to provide you information through the 9th month of the fiscal year. The City of Saco's financial position remains strong through Q3 with net operating income of $7 million and unassigned fund balance of $19,142,716. This represents 28.9% of the adopted budget. The unassigned fund balance should come down over the next couple of months between tax bills. Revenues on taxes were recouped through the month with only 3% outstanding as of March 31st, 2023. On the expense side, expenses are right on target through March 31st. Capital projects, city administration, communications, county tax, finance, fire and ambulance, fringe benefits, information technology, insurance, parks and rec, public works, school budget, supported entities, and transfers were all on target because they were within 5% of forecast. I will now move through those departments that were outside of that 5% window. The assessor is 16% behind forecast. This is primarily due to contracts, still a little bit behind forecast. The department is looking at contracted services for GIS through the rest of the year. City clerk, 15% behind forecast. This is, once again, primarily due to general assistance, 40% behind forecast year to date. Code enforcement is 8% behind forecast. The department has had some turnover, so there are savings on the base pay line. Travel and training are also running behind forecast. Contingency is 44% behind forecast. Abatements and senior tax assistance were both light in fiscal year 2023. Council budget, 29% behind forecast. Miscellaneous supplies and travel and training are both light year to date. Human resources, 7% ahead of forecast. The department has had some wage adjustments and continues to make use of consulting services when needed. Future training and consulting services will be paid for out of contingency to avoid further overspending the departmental appropriation. Planning is 29% behind forecast. This is primarily being driven by contracted services. The funds will be used to make a final payment on the now approved comprehensive plan, as well as a local match to a grant-funded sub-area plan and a few other projects through the remainder of the year. The police department is 12% behind forecast. Most of this is due to openings in the department. Base pay net of overtime is $232,400 behind forecast. Unspent funds related to the IMC CAD RMS assessment are another factor. I have encouraged the police chief to encumber the remaining funds that were appropriated for fiscal year 2023 to progress that project through 2024, as no dedicated funds were included in the city administrator's budget for next year. The solicitor is 20% behind forecast, very encouraging. Use of the city solicitor has been lower in years past, but we do anticipate fully expending those funds by the end of the year. TIF transfers were 7% ahead of forecast. TIF transfers are budgeted based on estimates about valuation and the tax rate for the future year. However, the actual amount of the transfer is at the discretion of the city's assessor based on property valuation and the final tax rate. In fiscal year 2023, TIF transfers totaled $5,242,516. CEA payments for applicable districts were distributed as of April 27th, 2023. Are there any questions on expenditures? So switching over to revenues, as I mentioned, revenues overall were very close to target through the end of March. Revenue categories within 5% of target were capital projects, communications, which is our franchise fees, fire ambulance, parks and rec, and planning fees. Speaking about some of those specific revenue categories that were outside of that window, building rental revenue, 63% behind forecast. The city has written off some rental income deemed uncollectible. Other rental income has compensated for the write-off, but just generally, we're going to have a light year on rental income. City clerk revenues are 27% behind forecast. Again, this is tied into general assistance revenues being behind forecast, as well as some significant delays. I'm seeing payouts from the state lingering 6 months on the receivables end, and I do track every month what's been submitted to the state versus what is received, and there have been a couple of months where we haven't gotten anything on general assistance, so it's a combination of factors on that revenue line. Code enforcement revenues are 11% ahead of forecast. Building permits have picked up with the spring building season, as well as some significant construction projects which are now underway. Finance revenues are 19% behind forecast. Tax lien interest is lower than anticipated. This number was not adjusted based on a lower interest rate for tax liens in 23, but that should pick up in 24 closer to what's been forecasted. Insurance claims. So the first portion of the insurance payment has been received at City Hall. That should be deposited in April. That's related to the damage that occurred during that February deep freeze. The second portion should be booked upon completion of the project, likely to be booked as a receivable at year's end if we do not get that second payment. Interest earnings, $483,091 to date. Interest rates remain strong. We do not anticipate any reduction for sure in the federal interest rate, and so we feel confident in some of the forecasts that have been set for next year, as well as maintaining a strong interest return and market valuation gains through the end of fiscal year 23. Police department is 29% ahead of forecast. The department has received 2 checks related to the MCJA certified police officers who departed for other municipalities. A portion of these additional funds is set to be appropriated for council. In fact, that appropriation was approved this evening, and so those revenues are going to look a little bit less ahead of forecast because we'll have budgeted for them next month. Parks and Rec revenues are 8% ahead of forecast, my apologies, Public Works revenues 8% ahead of forecast. Again, this relates to motor vehicle excise tax, stronger than budgeted because, of course, that's a fixed rate, and as motor vehicle prices go up, so do our excise revenues. State assistance is 15% ahead of forecast. The state is now fully funding revenue sharing and homestead exemptions. Inflation has also boosted overall state receipts, so there's a certain percentage that's shared to municipalities. As state receipts increase, that state revenue sharing also increases because it's a percentage. Unallocated, we're above budget by $15,514. This is related to an opioid settlement. So initially when we received those funds back in November, December, they were deposited into the miscellaneous account, but we will be reclassifying those based on the council amendment, the first reading of which was this evening. And lastly, use of fund balance. We have a placeholder account here, but of course we don't receive revenues. That's just a way for us to balance the budget in our reporting. Are there any questions on revenues?
Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Not a question, but an observation. The reason I have no questions is because I find the clarity in your presentation to be really spot on. So, and I'm the type of person that would likely come up with questions. So kudos to you. If I could encourage you to continue to be as clear in your budget updates moving forward, I think that would be really good for the council. Thank you.
Certainly, appreciate that feedback. Okay, last section, just a quick update on grants. Grant-related expenditures in the general fund totaled $17,313 with offsetting revenues of $18,017. Sometimes there's a little bit of a difference depending on if the city has put in for covering the cost of overhead, which is budgeted elsewhere. Grants-related expenditures in all other funds totaled $103,145 with offsetting grant revenue $102,933. And ARPA expenditures all in total $243,693. The city of Saco did meet its requirements to submit reporting to the federal government in April, so we are all set on that for another year. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes new business this evening. Brings us on to item 11, that is the administrative update. City Administrator Kainrath.
Thank you. A couple of just quick updates. Our next agenda, May 22nd, we'll have an efficiency main presentation. We'll have the final reading for the CDBG housing grant. And we'll also have a council workshop. Our topics there will be focused on housing, including affordable housing as well as residential growth. These were topics that were previously submitted by Councilors Berman and Hatch. Final reminder, next Monday, 5:15 at 10 a.m., the Army Corps of Engineers will be here for their site visit if you'd like to join us. I recently had the opportunity to meet with the new Maine Water president to discuss their new facility coming online in Biddeford. He also, again, highlighted the rate increases that ratepayers can expect to see. So for this year, July 1, there will be a 12% increase, followed by a nearly 11% increase in 24. And the final increment will be down actually about 3.5% for 25, and all three of these increments are part of the current rate proceeding at the PUC. Lastly, my next city administrator's open office hours will be May 30th, 3:30 to 5 here on the second floor of City Hall. Thank you.
Any questions for City Administrator Kainrath? No questions. Moving on to item 12, council discussion and comment. Any council discussion and comment this evening? Councilor Gunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to beat a dead horse or anything. My amendment felt lost, and council speaks as one, so I'm perfectly fine with that. That being said, I just want to say I still feel my concerns were valid, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Director Presby this weekend, though, but I invite the chance to be able to talk to you about your current plans for development, and I think a good faith update on what the Saco Main Street wants to do in terms of fundraising in the next 6 to 8 months, though, I think would be prudent for the next council, because if we take other councilors at their word, though, then a year from now, if there is no movement on this, then that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And like I said, I want to be proven wrong in this situation. I want to make sure you folks get all the money you need, and that you're also be able to bring in the money that you need, and that's wonderful. That being said, 2 other points I want to make. I realize that a couple councilors received emails in support of my motion, support in actually opposition to my motion. That being said, we're elected to make difficult decisions, and sometimes we do it in a vacuum, sometimes we do it with a crowd, like we saw a week ago with practically half of Councilor Berman's ward showing up in support of those sidewalks. So, and I applaud everybody that came out for that. That being said, when folks express support or opposition, it's often in a vacuum without knowing the particulars, and that's why you have a council. That's why we don't just simply write a blank check and say yes to everything, because if we did, we'd be out of money and no one would be happy. So I would simply say that it's easy to make a decision based on feedback one way or the other, though, but it's not prudent long-term to make those type of decisions, though, and it's like I take the heat one way or the other. So I'll just leave that as a philosophical difference I might have with other counselors. And the third point I'll make is we've had counselors up until recent history offer amendments from the table the night of, and that was not a big that was not considered controversial, that was not considered a way of sliding things in, though. That was just considered part of the process. And I did not follow that, and no one followed that this year. I put in my amendment. People had 4 days, 5 days to tell me how wrong and awful I was. And to Councilor Berman's point, if I didn't give them 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then that was a personal choice, though. But obviously, his side won the debate on this one, so it didn't make any lick of difference in terms of the actual parameters of the debate. People got their points in, and councilors obviously have their own minds, and they made their decisions. So any insinuation that my integrity was less than spot on in this one, I must take exception to, because councilors, including some up here, have done that for years, and we never, from this podium, called other councilors' intentions into question, simply by following the rules, though. And like I said, whether it's good politics or bad optics, I didn't elect to do that. No one did this year, though. So I was going to say we're just going to leave that debate there, and I just want to put that point out there that I think I did nothing untoward in what I offered, and I want to make a point thanking Councilor McPhail for her support.
Thank you. Any further council discussion and comment? Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. 2 quick points. One to dovetail with Councilor Gunn's comment. Councilor Berman, I think it would be very helpful if, as liaison to Saco Main Street, as you move forward with that plan, maybe as committee correspondents, you could just update us on what's going on. I think that would be helpful. And then as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I would like to ask City Administrator Kainrath to make sure that we get the essence of Councilor Berman's motion for the $500,000 sinking fund, as I call it, on the list of items for a future council workshop, and I would encourage that to take some level of priority as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just address those 2 comments, and I have something else to add also. Sometimes we get into heated debates up here. I have great respect for all my fellow councilors and what they're trying to accomplish. I meant what I said, but I'm glad we can all move forward. And of course, as Saco Main Street directs me, I'm happy to bring numbers, budgets, and updates to council as part of my council updates. I also suggest that many of our city-supported entities could probably do more to share their monthly and quarterly budgets with council, adding transparency. Saco Main Street is no exception to that. On an entirely different note, now for something completely different, on the ride over, I was listening to the public radio, and I learned that in Sanford, they're having a bit of an asylum seeker refugee crisis. A number of Angolan refugees have made their way to Sanford seeking housing and finding no assistance there. And there are now dozens of families who are sleeping on the stairs of City Hall looking for shelter. I would encourage the city, as we just got an update stating that some of our general assistance funds are underspent, to see if we can somehow assist with that crisis. And if there's anybody listening who's helping coordinate that response, I would be eager to be part of the solution and would encourage you to reach out and contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further council discussion and comment? Moving on to item 13, executive session. I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Be it ordered that the City Council enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, Section 4056C, potential purchase of property.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail. Any discussion? Roll call. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to enter executive session at 9 p.m. Executive session will be upstairs in the administrator's conference room, and we will take a 5-minute recess in between. So please be there by 9:05. Greetings and welcome back. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
Counselor Hatch, is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Berman, any discussion? Roll call to exit executive session. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to exit executive session at 9:18 PM. That brings us to item 14 of the agenda. There's no report from executive session. That brings us to item 15. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Counselor Hatch, is there a second?
Second.
Counselor McPhail, any discussion? Roll call to adjourn. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 9:18. Have a wonderful evening.